All right, well, good morning, everybody, and happy Saturday. It's Meteorologist Ansley Parker here, and we are going to go ahead and dive into the forecast for the upcoming day today, the overnight tonight, and then, of course, as we head into early Sunday morning, that time frame where we will be watching for wintry mix, mainly freezing rain in our northern counties. Of course, we have the winter storm watch that is now a winter weather advisory. We'll talk about all the latest changes, what you can expect for the rest of the day today. And then if you happen to miss this live stream or you're just looking for more information as we go through the rest of the afternoon, we are fully staffed heading into the rest of the day today. So our full weather team will be here. We'll be providing updates every hour on the hour all morning long, into the afternoon, into the evening, and into the overnights as well. So lots of ways to stay updated as we go throughout the rest of today. But let's dive into it. We're going to start off with what we have right now. And I'm going to talk a lot about the rest of the day today because this afternoon actually is going to be pretty calm. So as we go through the rest of today, there's really not going to be too much on the way. It's really as we head into the overnight hours tonight. So for most of your Saturday, things actually will be mainly okay. We'll have kind of a similar look to the last few days where it's cloudy outside. There's maybe a light shower or two. But again, through most of the afternoon, weather really won't be too much of a big story. High temperature will be cooler than yesterday. We'll find our way into the low 50s in the warmest spots, but a lot of areas could hang out in the upper 40s. So a quiet day today. The real story doesn't move in until we start talking about the late night hours tonight and then the overnight hours into kind of early Sunday morning. But you may remember over the last couple of days, we've been talking a lot about what the setup is going to be like for this, and it's very dependent on what happens with our wedge. So this is a pattern that we talk about a lot here in central Georgia. The wedge is a very common thing that we deal with. If you don't remember or you're not familiar with what that is, we get this northeasterly flow that tries to filter this air into the mountains, but then it gets stuck and it actually filters further south into our area. So it causes a lot of that flow up here in northeast Georgia, but often stretches as far as our area. So that's kind of what's going to be happening as we go throughout the day today. The wedge is going to be building in. You can see we already have the flow coming in from the northeast, so it's kind of starting to make its way into the state, and it will be taking over the northeast portion of the state and again stretching down into our northern counties, which is actually why those counties are included in this wintry mix type of situation for overnight tonight into early tomorrow morning. So not there just yet, but as we go throughout the day today, you'll be able to tell just looking at the temperature map, obviously statewide, but also countywide, how the wedge is building in, what counties it's sitting in, and what counties not so much. Our southern counties today will have the opportunity to get warmer. They'll have a little bit more sunshine. Our northern counties are the ones who will be under the wedge pattern. They will be sitting under some cloudier skies, and then ultimately that's what will lead to the cooler temperatures that will allow them to kind of have a reinforcement of cool air overnight tonight that will help with things staying freezing as precip begins to drop tonight. So another way you can kind of tell is by looking at the winds. Again, obviously I said we have the flow coming in from the northeast now, so as that filters into our area, you'll be able to tell just kind of looking at areas that have stronger winds where the wedge is sitting as well. So right now, again, not totally set up, but the beginnings of the wedge are kind of underway across the state. So satellite and radar wise, this morning we just have a lot of cloud cover. Throughout the rest of the day today, like I said, it's going to be similar to the last few days. So there may be a light shower or two. If you happen to catch a shower or two through this afternoon, I don't want you to start panicking thinking that that's actually freezing rain. Our temperatures throughout the rest of today should be above freezing. It's not until later tonight that we start to find our way to below freezing, and that again is when the freezing rain potential starts to enter the picture. So through this afternoon, not a ton to focus on until late tonight. But when we take this satellite and radar a lot bigger picture, you can see actually we do have some freezing rain moving into portions of the state. Now there's a lot going on over in Texas, a big freezing rain over in Arkansas. There's a lot of snow over there as well. And then down in Louisiana, a couple areas of freezing rain there. And over in Mississippi and Alabama, we're starting to see that as well. So clearly things are starting to get set up here, and we'll take it back to whoop, a little too big there. The northern portion of our state, which is actually over here is where I was trying to go. You know, I was trying to do a smooth transition, but I think, whoops, I think I just need to use the regular radar tool. Okay. So you can see some of this freezing rain is moving into the northwestern corner of the state. Now notice It's not all freezing rain. You can see that there is kind of some mixed precip going on in here. The radar's having a hard time picking up with what's frozen and what's not. So a little bit of a mix going on up here in the northwest corner of the state, but it's already starting for these areas. So actually these counties up here in northwestern Georgia were under their advisories, their warnings, their watches for an earlier time frame than the rest of the state. So just because they're seeing stuff right now does not mean that our timeline has changed at all. This was kind of the expected timeline of things up in that region, just because of the timing of when this system would be moving in. If I flip off the satellite, you can really get a better picture of what's going on up there. Again, a lot of freezing rain, likely some sleet, just kind of a mixed precip situation going on up there. And you can see the snowfall stays further north of that. So that axis of actual true snowfall is going to be tracking further to the north of our state line. So we are really talking about basically for the entire state, just a full mixed precip / freezing rain situation, not a snowfall situation, even for portions of northern Georgia. So that is what that looks like at the moment. Again, not moving our direction just yet. We're still talking about a late night / early morning situation for our northern counties, but that is where things stand at the moment. So on the topic of kind of the big picture of this system, I like to kind of show how this looks large scale, because this is a very, very big system. And I'm sure you've heard this before, because that's why this is being talked about so much, not only here in Georgia, but across multiple states, across a lot of national news platforms. I mean, this is a system that is going to span many, many states and bring a lot of strong impacts to a lot of different areas. So just to kind of show you what it looks like on a larger scale, again, taking this out to early morning tomorrow, that's when we're going to start to see some impacts from this. But a lot of heavy snowfall in places that are further to the north of that axis between snowfall and freezing rain. In fact, my younger brother lives in Lexington, Kentucky, and he told me yesterday that they are forecasted to get around 2 feet of snow up there. So clearly, yes, obviously it's a big impact for the areas that are dealing with the freezing rain, but the areas that are dealing with the snowfall are also dealing with just as drastic of impacts as well. So this system, again, stretches large scale, continues all the way up into the northeastern corner of the United States, and then eventually moves on as we head into the beginning of next work week. So before I go any further on our specific future view, break down the timing, break down the specific impacts, I want to show this briefly. I'm going to use the phrases mixed precip, freezing rain, sleet a lot. So just really quickly as a reminder and a refresher before we go much further, these are the two things that I'm talking about. And you will likely kind of just see this dreary rainfall situation as we kind of enter our freezing rain. And that is true. We're dealing with rainfall at basically every single level in the atmosphere until we get to the surface. So what freezing rain is it's rain that falls into above freezing temperatures until it gets to the surface. The surface is freezing, meaning that that water, once it comes in contact with the surface, actually freezes. So that's why it causes an ice issue, because yes, it's rainfall, but then it freezes on the surface, creates a coating of ice where it falls, and that is the issue with freezing rain, and that's why it has such drastic impacts. There may be some areas up in North Georgia that deal with sleet, kind of a similar story, falls into a warmer sector in the atmosphere and then starts to freeze as it makes its way to the surface. So we're talking about a freezing rain potential here in central Georgia, but you may also hear me mention sleet, and that is what sleet is. Some parts of North Georgia may deal with that as well. So let's talk a little bit about the severity of the impacts. I really like this graphic. The National Weather Service made this, and they've been using it a lot to highlight which areas are going to be dealing with the strongest impacts from this system. Now you'll notice, most glaringly, here in central Georgia, we are on the very low end scale of any sort of impacts. This is a new category actually added sometime yesterday afternoon. We really only went up to high impacts, but the National Weather Service has now designated this portion of the northeastern corner of the state as likely to see some sort of extreme impacts. So this is because of the wedge. Remember, we were talking about that being the driving factor for areas that are going to be under impacts from this system. The wedge builds into the northeastern half of the state, so that's why it takes on this shape. It's not a coincidence. The areas that are under the strongest portions of the wedge will have reinforcement of cooler air and a reinforcement of that precip. So they'll just keep on seeing cooler air and freezing rain as we go throughout tonight, tomorrow, and then the temperatures will really struggle to get above freezing as we head into the upcoming work week as well. So that's why the impacts are strongest here in this area. In the northern kind of entire tier of the state, we're still talking about high impacts because, again, the wedge will still be building into most of the northern portion of the state. Then we start to talk about our area. We are in this low to moderate category. Our northern counties that are included in what I'll show you here in a minute, which is a winter weather advisory, are in this moderate category. Now, whoa, I did not mean to flip over to the future or to the 7-day. I accidentally just hot buttoned when I meant to spacebar. What I wanted to show you was this is the kind of key to what I'm showing you here. We are in that moderate to low category. That means that in our moderate areas, we're talking up to 1/4 of an inch of ice. So that is still an impact. We've talked about this a lot over the last couple of days. 1/4 of an inch of ice is still capable of making some roads a little bit hazardous and then also causing a couple of power outages as well. Obviously, the much higher, more extreme impacts are when you go beyond that 1/4 of an inch. And then we also have some areas that are not necessarily in that winter storm or winter weather advisory. Those are areas like the northern tier of Wilkinson, Twiggs, Bibb, Crawford, and Upson. Those areas could potentially see a very, very minor light ice accumulation. So we're talking most likely about little to no impacts in those areas, but they could potentially see a couple of areas of patchy ice. The main impacts here in central Georgia will be the counties that are outlined in the winter weather advisory. Those are the areas that could potentially see up to 1/4 of an inch of ice. And I'll show you here in a minute, we will have some stronger wind gusts that could potentially lead to some issues with power outages as well. So that is the overall impact. I am going to come back to this in more detail. I'll show you a couple of ice maps and we will talk a little bit more about that winter weather advisory, what that means, who's in it. But this is just kind of an overview of the entire state. As I'm talking about that wedge, I want to kind of show you how that's going to have subsequent impacts across the entire state. So with that being said, we are going to jump into the future view. I'll talk a little bit more about timing, show you locations, and we will just look at everything on the future view. And then again, I will go into more of those impacts. And then I know we are live on Facebook and I will address questions on Facebook at the end as well. So save your questions. I promise I see you, I will get to you. Let me just kind of run through this first and then I will turn to questions here at the end. So starting with today, like I mentioned, through the day today, overall impacts are going to be extremely minimal. We have a light rain chance out there, but other than that, we are not going to see any sort of freezing rain through this afternoon because our temperatures are just going to be too warm. So occasionally you might see, a stray shower or two, but overall through today, it should be a mainly dry, quiet day. If you're looking to get outdoors and you are in our northern counties, kind of worried about the timing of this whole thing, you should be fine until we get into kind of the late night hours tonight. You can see even by this evening, still we haven't made that transition yet into freezing rain. Even parts of northern Georgia still haven't made that transition yet. So we kind of have to wait until that wedge builds in for these temperatures to really get cold enough for us to support freezing rain. So let's take it into the late night hours tonight around 11 p.m. This is when we start to make that transition. Notice this freezing area here is trying to stretch into our region. So in the overnight hours tonight, really the early morning hours, I'm going to say that a lot. That means basically Sunday after midnight. That is when we'll start to see the bulk of the freezing rain here in our area. So Sunday after midnight, we start to see this become a little more widespread across the northern counties. Again, southern counties will still be seeing rain, but it's really this line of transition. Freezing temperatures up here because they're under the wedge, above freezing temperatures down here because the wedge will not stretch quite that far. So throughout the morning, everybody's going to be dealing with rain, but north of I-16, that rain could be freezing. South of I-16, that rain will likely just be regular rain. We're still in the early morning hours Sunday. Likely a lot of you guys are sleeping, and we climb into maybe time when folks may be starting their day. So we'll still be dealing with this all the way into about the mid-morning hours for Sunday. So even by 7, 8 a.m., we could still see a couple of spots of freezing rain. Models have gone kind of back and forth on that, but I would say even still in the mid-morning, there could be a couple of things out there. It's really not until the late morning, so 10 to 11 a.m. on Sunday, that things finally begin to move out. By noon, so really Saturday at midnight to Sunday at noon is kind of our main time frame. It's really all the hours in the morning on Sunday that we're dealing with freezing rain. By noon, our temperatures will start to climb above freezing. We'll kind of make our way out of the wedge, but then this forecast just really is honestly becoming a little bit comical, because then Sunday afternoon, after the temperatures are going to go above freezing, check this out. We've got this organized line of showers and thunderstorms, and then this becomes the primary story for the second half of Sunday. So Sunday is going to be perfectly split into two halves. The first half of Sunday is going to be before noon. That's when we're dealing with the freezing rain impacts, and that's when freezing rain will still be falling. Sunday after noon, we'll start to be dealing with more of a severe weather chance in the form of this organized line of showers and thunderstorms. So by around 1 to 2, that's going to be entering our northwestern counties here, and then it's just going to be pushing across our entire area throughout the late afternoon, early evening time frame. So maybe making its way into the southeastern counties by around 4 to 5. And it doesn't really clear our area, at least the initial line, until around 6 to 7 on Sunday evening. And we're still dealing with some rain behind the initial line. So most of Sunday is going to be a wash. It's going to be a messy day, but the first half is going to be about freezing rain. The second half, all the way until probably you go to bed on Sunday night, is going to be about this line of showers and thunderstorms. Thankfully, after this moves on, we kick off the upcoming work week with clear skies, and we will stay very, 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 very quiet through basically the entire work week this week. So no major rain chance on the way, at least Monday through Friday. But we're packing in plenty as we go throughout the weekend. So with that being said, of course, we're talking about our winter weather chance. That is kind of the primary focus of the forecaster right now, but I don't want this portion of the forecast to get lost, because this is also very important. That line of showers and thunderstorms will potentially be strong to severe in areas that support enough fuel. So notice this cutoff line here is pretty close to I-16. So we've been using I-16 a lot as our line where freezing rain could fall. North of I-16, they have a little bit of a freezing rain potential. South of I-16, it's just going to be too warm. The wedge does not make its way quite far enough. So what you see here outlined by the Storm Prediction Center, imagine these areas, this is kind of how the wedge stretches down. So the rest of the area is got sunshine. Their temperatures will be somewhere in the 60s to 70s south of I-16. So that's enough fuel to support maybe a couple of thunderstorms that could get strong to severe. So what am I talking about with our severe weather potential for this afternoon? We're talking about potential severe thunderstorms. So that means we're mainly watching for gusty winds. There could be some brief areas of hail. The main things that we look for with severe thunderstorms are winds and hail. A lot of folks, want to know about what the tornado risk is with this. With any level 1, especially here as we kind of climb closer to the springtime, there's always going to be a tornado risk associated with that. But for a level 1 of 5 risk, that tornado risk is extremely low. If we happen to see anything at all, it will be a very brief spin up that does not stretch very long and does not overall get very strong. So yes, there's a slight tornado risk there, but is that one of the main concerns with this level 1 risk? Not necessarily. It's just one of the things that the Storm Prediction Center includes when they go with a level 1 risk. If folks are curious, I can even show, I know a lot of people like to look at this tornado parameter. We can look at it just for the sake of looking at it, but you will likely see the southern counties may have a little more energy, which is kind of what that is there. And notice the shading of these colors, it's really just white. So if we were starting to see a lot of areas of dark orange or, a red color, that's when there would be a little bit more of a concern. But when we start to see just these whites and oranges, again, that's overall kind of a low end spin up risk rather than a long track tornado risk. So that's what that is. We also have this on the HRRR model, though I'm not sure if the HRRR will go out this far, but we can take a look at it and just see. Let's see if the HRRR will take us there. Maybe just before it. So same kind of thing on the HRRR. My computer's trying to fight me on this one. You'll notice at the top of the screen, I wanted to kind of point this out. The scale is on this one, and the low end risk is in the whites to greens. So we're nowhere near that high end potential, and it's really for the southern counties that are outlined in the risk by the Storm Prediction Center. So what I normally say about this kind of thing is, it's something that we'll be paying attention to. We'll watch all morning or all afternoon to see if any small cells try to start turning. But if we happen to get a warning, it will be very short-lived, and it won't be something that's very long track. So it's definitely still important to be paying attention as we go through the second half of Sunday, especially if you're in our southern counties that are outlined in this risk. Just because we'll be wanting to watch for alerts for severe thunderstorms, if there's some gusty winds with those. Obviously, that's not something you'll want to be outside for, so I think it's just important to be on guard throughout the afternoon. Luckily, though, that severe weather risk will die down before bedtime on Sunday night, so you really should be awake. It's not really an overnight threat, and it should hopefully be pretty short-lived, and then we will move on with our weekend. So that is a brief aside to the severe weather risk, but let's jump back into the winter weather risk, which is late night tonight and early Sunday morning. So we'll take you through the HRRR model here. We just looked at the graph a moment ago, and the HRRR model actually takes a little bit of a conservative take. You'll notice that the graph model had kind of basically all areas north of I-16 having the potential for this freezing rain. The HRRR model, it really sticks to these counties that are in the watch, which we will talk about more here in just a moment. But this is kind of how the HRRR does it. Same timing, so time frame is still pretty much the same here on the HRRR, but in terms of how far south it stretches, the HRRR is a little more conservative. Then we have this line come through, and then Monday is on the way, and all of this is gone. So this is another model. This is the NAM model. I am not a huge fan of this model. It's just a very outdated one, but it's one of our higher resolution models, so we will use it nonetheless. Again, you'll see a similar thinking to both the HRRR and the graph. Same kind of time frame. Note the timestamp. We're in overnight/early morning hours Sunday, and it continues most of Sunday morning into about noon on Sunday. And then we see that back off, and then here comes the line. The NAM has the line way back here on Sunday evening. I don't agree with that. Again, I have my issues with this model, but the point is more to show the winter weather potential here than the severe weather potential. So in terms of areas of impact, the National Weather Service early this morning has made one edit to this winter weather alert. That is that they added Monroe County into the winter weather advisory. So you may remember yesterday this was a winter storm watch. Now we have been upgraded to a winter weather advisory. So what does the upgrade actually mean? Not much, other than the National Weather Service is becoming more certain about the area that could potentially deal with some light ice accumulation. So it's the same kind of thing as a tornado watch versus a warning, right? When we're in a watch, these are the areas that the National Weather Service will be watching for. When we bump up to, I know it's not a warning, but an advisory, it's kind of a similar bump up. These areas are more expected to see some light ice accumulation. How much accumulation? Again, in that moderate to low end category. That means ice accumulation up to about 1/4 of an inch here in these areas. And the much higher impacts will be up here in North Georgia, where in those extreme areas, like I showed you on that severity of impacts graphic, we're talking up to an inch of ice accumulation, which is a really big deal. It's very personal for us to forecast for our area, of course, but I do have, my family is up in Atlanta, so if you're kind of asking me personally which areas I'm more concerned about, I really think we are going to be a-okay here in our region. A lot of our stuff will melt, especially as we head into the upcoming work week with our temperatures jumping above freezing. I'm a lot more concerned about my family up in Atlanta. They just really won't have the opportunity to see temperatures that are above freezing, and I think we're talking about a lot more long duration power outages up here in northern Georgia. So if you have family up in this region like myself that may not be aware of the risk that they're under, just kind of give them a heads up, give them a call, and let them know what's heading their way. Here in central Georgia, again, we are much more comfortable with the ice accumulation that we are expected to see. This is not something that should be super out of the ordinary. Yes, it could cause some impacts on the roads and some impacts in terms of light power outages, but it's stuff that we should be able to restore fairly quickly and should not really cause long duration issues like they may have up in North Georgia. So this is the same thing, but in a different graphic. You can see we potentially have the chance to get between 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch. And again, the higher impacts will be up in North Georgia, specifically where that wedge builds in northeastern Georgia. Now, one thing I'll mention briefly while we're on this graphic, you'll see, remember the counties that are outlined in the advisory. That's going to be Washington, Hancock, Putnam, Jasper, Jones, Baldwin, and Monroe. Bibb County is not in that advisory. Twiggs County is not in that advisory. Wilkinson County is not in that advisory. Neither are Upson or Crawford, excuse me. So these areas are still slightly shaded in here, right? I think that if you are north of I-16, you have the potential to have a really light area of ice accumulation. I'm talking there may be some patchy areas of ice here and there, especially in shady areas, but overall, if you are in these areas, the ice accumulation will not be impactful really honestly whatsoever. You may have to just be a little bit careful on the roads in the morning, but same kind of thing when we're talking about this graphic here, because this will show you those areas are the areas that are outlined in yellow. We're talking very minor ice accumulation, potentially less than 1/4 of an inch, maybe in some spots even less than a measurable amount. We're talking trace amounts of ice accumulation. So here in Macon, that's kind of one of those areas that's on the dividing line. I would say, you know, me personally, if you're asking me what I'm going to do on Sunday morning, I'm going to try to avoid being on the roads Sunday morning just because I don't want to encounter an area of potential slight ice accumulation, especially because when we're on the roads, it can be especially difficult to see. I personally don't really like to mess around with ice because it freaks me out, and I'm not a skilled driver in terms of driving in ice. I'm from Georgia, so I'm not a northerner who has a lot of experience with this, so I'm going to stay off of the roads. Even though our ice accumulation is going to be very low, I just don't want to encounter an area of slight patchy ice. The other areas south of I-16 should not have to worry about this whatsoever, but Macon is one of those areas that's kind of on the dividing line. So there may be a spot or two of light ice accumulation, but the higher, more measurable amounts will be in those counties that are actually outlined in the advisory. So I apologize if it sounds like I'm repeating myself, but I really want to drive that point home because we're kind of on this dividing edge between rainfall and freezing rain. So I know a lot of folks are wondering, well, okay, how does this apply to me specifically? It's really just that kind of Macon area that's on that dividing line. Warner Robins, Dublin, areas south of I-16 should not really have to worry about this whatsoever. And it's echoed further when we look at these projected model totals with ice. In fact, a lot of these long range models have backed this off from even really dealing with our northern counties quite so much. I definitely think our northern counties will see something, but you'll notice, you know, a lot of these models, the GFS and the Euro and the NAM, this morning at least, have kind of backed this off just a little bit. Now I'll say yesterday they were a little more involved with our area seeing something. This is just kind of the most recent trend, but it's kind of good news for us. It really just looks like any sort of accumulation is going to be up there in the advisory areas, and otherwise it's going to be pretty minimal impacts here across central Georgia. So quickly, let's talk about what these accumulations could actually mean here in our area. When we're talking about 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch, that's when we're talking about just a light glaze. So this means that we could have a couple of slick spots like I was mentioning. That's why I'm going to be off of the roads. Just don't want to encounter any really light slick spots that could be on the roads or on sidewalks, but it's definitely not going to make the roads impassable. You can be on the roads if you choose to, so long as you exercise some caution. Now we're at the 1/4 of an inch. Those are the areas in the advisory that are going to have some slightly more problematic ice issues. This means really kind of the biggest difference between the 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch is the fact that we could have some power lines beginning to fail, especially because we will have some stronger wind gusts out there this Sunday morning. So when we start talking about 1/4 of an inch, that's the difference between those areas that are in the light glaze versus the areas that may be dealing with some issues from the ice accumulation. So that is kind of the general difference between the areas that are in the low versus the areas that are in the moderate impacts there. And then this graphic that I threw on here is just everything that I just said several times, but outlined in writing so that you can kind of have this as your take-home advice for the rest of the morning until we hop back on here at 8 a.m. and we will keep talking about the forecast. The potential ice accumulation is again in that minor to moderate impacts, 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch, mainly in the advisory area. The counties that are north of I-16 should still pay attention to areas of light patchy ice. Again, that is what I'm talking about here in Macon, not necessarily making the roads, impassable by any means, but you may encounter 1 or 2 spots of just really light patchy ice. Then of course, don't forget, Sunday afternoon, especially south of I-16, we need to be on guard for a kind of low-end severe weather potential, depending on how much sunshine we get, depending on kind of how the fuel looks in the second half of Sunday. So unfortunately, it's a weekend to be plugged into the forecast all weekend long, because even as we lose this winter weather potential, we are just going to replace it with a low-end severe weather potential. So that's the big takeaway. I'll show you the 7-day forecast because I know that there are likely some questions about whoa. Okay, I meant to point to that. I honestly don't even know how I just did that. Let me see if I can reset it. Alex is with me. I don't even know how I just did that. Strange. Okay, I meant to point to Monday morning. Let's see if I can reload it. I'm having all sorts of technical difficulty this morning. All right, so Monday morning, the temperature is expected to go below freezing. So one of the things that we've kind of been emphasizing over the last couple of days is the refreeze potential that's there for early Monday morning. That's why the weather impact alert continues into Monday morning. Now that is there definitely because we don't lose the rainfall until late Sunday night, so we will have a lot of standing water. Obviously, that standing water will have the chance to refreeze on Monday morning, but now that we're kind of getting in range of Monday morning here on the graph model, Chief Meteorologist Ben Jones made a really good point last night. He was saying, as we go into the overnight hours into early Monday morning, we really don't see below freezing temperatures until we get close to sunrise. So there's not really a long time for any of this standing water to actually freeze. Notice we're only in the 20s here in Macon at around 7 a.m. So around the time that the sun is going to start coming out. So there's a very small window when standing water could potentially be refreezing. Now that doesn't mean that there's not going to be areas of ice out there in some of these standing water parts, but that window for freezing is pretty short. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind as you make plans for Monday morning. If you can even just delay your departure a little bit, maybe closer to the 10 to 11 a.m. time frame, our temperatures will be climbing back above freezing, and hopefully any of that standing ice out there should potentially begin to start to melt. So if you're trying to make plans for Monday morning, that time frame that things could be freezing is very short, and best case scenario would just kind of be delaying your plans to be out on the roads Monday morning. But we will kind of keep an eye on this as we go throughout the rest of the weekend to see what the refreeze potential is. It's still there, don't get me wrong. We will be below freezing on Monday morning. It's just a very short window that actually happens. So there is definitely an opportunity that folks can still be out on the roads on Monday morning. It just may have to be a little bit later than typical commute time and things like that. So that's kind of the last point that I had to address there, and I actually ended up being a little bit long-winded. So let me quickly turn to the comments here on Facebook to see if there are any specific questions. And if not, we are coming right back at 8 a.m. here on 13 WMAZ Plus for an extended version of 13 WMAZ Weekend Morning. So instead of the show going from 9 to 10, it's going to go from 8 to 10 starting on 13 WMAZ Plus. So meteorologist Alex Pry, like I mentioned, is here with me as well. We're going to start going into some dual coverage of this whole situation, and we will both be breaking down the forecast from, again, 8 all the way until 10, and then every hour on the hour there will be live updates as well. So plenty of opportunities to get your questions answered as well, but I will quickly run through these comments and see if there's anything that I potentially did not address. I do see questions about that Monday morning time frame, so hopefully I was able to clarify that a little bit with addressing it just now. And I see folks trying to say don't drive if you don't have to, and I totally agree with that, especially for counties that are north of I-16. All right, I've got one question that's a little more specific that I can definitely touch on. Will it be too bad in Atlanta today to head home to Warner Robins around 9 p.m.? Around 9 p.m. in the Atlanta area may be getting a little bit dicey as we kind of take this out. Oh, this is the HER model. Let's use the graph. As we take this out to later this evening, you know, around 9 p.m. could be the time that that freezing rain is starting. You can see that up there in the Atlanta area by then. So could be a little bit dicey. I would say if you could leave any earlier, that would be more ideal. You know, is it going to be a total shutdown at that point in time? Not necessarily, but I think maybe even just leaving an hour or two earlier would help you stay ahead of that actually coming in, because the closer and closer we get to this evening, the more potential there is for this freezing rain to begin in North Georgia. It really just depends on how early those temperatures begin to drop below freezing. So as we get closer to the evening, if that wedge builds in a little bit faster, the freezing rain could start a little bit earlier. As of right now, you're right on the cusp when you're talking about 9 p.m. So if you could leave any earlier than that, that would be my best advice to that specific question. So with that, I am going to come down here on the stream. Again, we are coming right back in less than 30 minutes. So if you're looking for more information, a recap of anything that I just said, we are coming right back here at 8 a.m. We'll do an extended show until 10 a.m. and then we will have information every single hour on the hour through the rest of the day today.